Well, good morning, everyone. We've reached that appointed time for our meeting to commence. I'd like to welcome everybody and call to order the Harnett County Board of Commissioners work session for April 13th, 2021. I'd like to call on Commissioner Johnson to give our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
All stand, please. Raise the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in prayer, please. Heavenly Father, we gather before you in a board this morning, and we ask for your continued and forever blessings for everyone here. As we continue to go through a viral pandemic across the world that seems to be picking up speed, please bless us and protect us. Give us the common sense to get out of its way, wear a mask, wash our hands, all the things that we should do. Father, let the decisions that we make in this county commissioners meeting and workshop today be the right ones for the right reasons. And we ask for your blessings for all of our family members, for everyone here. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Okay, next we have an update from Good Hope Hospital. Ms. Stewart, would you like to introduce our guest?
Sure. We'll have Matthew Bertinelli come up to give a presentation on Good Hope Hospital. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I appreciate your time for giving me a chance to come and speak about our program and just give you a little bit of an update on some of the things we are doing at Good Hope Hospital. I think that I wanted to just come and make it aware to the public some of the options that we have here locally for treatment for psychiatric care here in Harnett County. I think it's amazing that a lot of people are still unaware of the services that we offer at Good Hope Hospital and still are unsure of the program's existence and don't realize that the hospital was reopened as a psychiatric program about 8 years ago. Just a few things I wanted to present about Good Hope Hospital. We are an adult psychiatric program for acute inpatient psychiatry, and we typically have patients that are from all around the state, but primarily from Harnett County in the Sand Hills area. We are 16-bed program, and we are actually working right now on expansion and trying to turn that into 32 beds, which we expect to be completed by the end of the year. So we are expanding our services and working towards being able to provide a little bit more services to the community. We are also looking at other options all the time, such as having some opportunity to provide outpatient services for patients in the community, as I think the psychiatric need in the area is significant. In 2020, we served almost 500 patients, and we had about a little over 40 admissions per month on average with Good Hope Hospital. Once our patients arrive, they're typically in our program for about 7 to 10 days. That's kind of our most typical length of stay. What we tend to see is a few patients staying a little bit longer, maybe waiting for a state hospital bed or various concerns that might extend that length of stay, but the average is right around 10 days. So we treat patients who are in need of immediate care. Typically, our patients have a mood disorder or a psychotic disorder. We see a lot of patients who are suicidal or homicidal and struggling with daily activities and being able to keep themselves safe or being able to be safe around others. We do treat a lot of patients with a variety of different treatment modalities. We have 9 practitioners that rotate in and out of our hospital, from physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician's assistants. We also have 2 full-time clinical counselors and social workers, as well as a handful of other part-time counselors and social workers that we work with on a continuous basis. So we have a total of 57 employees at our hospital, and these are positions that are beneficial for the community, well, good paying positions. So we have a good program and opportunity for staff to grow and develop into more professional roles as well. We have entry-level positions, administrative positions, and clinical and nursing functions. We have been able to do a lot of partnerships with different colleges and universities around the area. We've had students in any program from a bachelor's in social work, nursing programs, up through physician programs, including working with Campbell University is one of the primary sources that we tend to work a lot with in our program. We have done some outcomes data, and in 2020 we had surveys come back that reflected that 90% of our patients would recommend our services to a family or friend or loved one needing similar services, and that's kind of the gold standard for healthcare, is looking at if people would refer their loved ones to the place, then there's something that you're doing right. So that's kind of one of our number lines that we've been very proud of as the hospital, and looking to really continue to deliver that good quality care right here in Harnett County. Again, we are adult population, so we don't offer any youth beds at this point, but anyone from 18 through any age we are able to provide services for. We do take male and female populations, so we work with whatever comes our way, as long as that primary need is mental health. So we'll see, for example, a lot of substance abuse as a secondary concern, but if that's the primary concern, we're looking at a referral elsewhere. If the primary concern is mental health, then we can treat that patient right here at Good Hope, and we can look towards working with the substance abuse issues as well. So I just really wanted to take a few moments and update everybody on what kind of services and what kind of program we have available, and give everybody the opportunity to be informed about what's available right here in Harnett County. So,
Thank you. We appreciate that. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Yes,
I have one, Chairman.
yes, Mr. Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, do you have a 24-hour, I guess, like hotline phone number for people to call if they have need for talking to a counselor?
we will take phone calls 24 hours a day. We can direct them to a hotline if they need that kind of assistance right at the moment. A lot of our patients are currently going through Betsy Johnson Hospital, and they'll get medically cleared there, and they refer to us. But we do have patients that have come right to our door that we've been able to assess and get screened and come in the door that way.
So if somebody needs emergency service because of a mental health issue, they need to call Betsy Johnson or go to Betsy Johnson first?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Commissioner McCoy?
Commissioner McCoy. First of all, let me say that I appreciate the service that you provide for Harnett County. And I served on the Sandhill board for 4 years, I think it was. So I'm very aware of the grants and everything that you all have gotten. But I was over there one day last week, and I see that you all are expanding, building more onto the hospital. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because that's something that I have heard discussions on for a couple of years now. I would like to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the Dorothea Dix grant, Good Hope was awarded some funding to expand those beds and services that we currently offer. and that will double our capacity from 16 to 32 beds. So we've been working on this process for several years at this
Yes.
point, trying to get the architectural drawings, trying to get permitting, trying to get everything lined up and contracted. And we're excited to say that we have broken ground, that we have been working on getting the structures built and starting to see some progress in that area. So we are expecting that those beds will be open and operable by the end of the year, and hopefully be another resource to the community.
Thank you. One more question I have for you. Have you seen more cases of mental illness since the pandemic, the virus? Because I'm hearing in the news media that it really is ramping up because people being isolated so much, and especially with the young people.
We absolutely saw a consistent flow of patients seeking services. A lot of those related to stresses surrounding the coronavirus, whether it be employment or housing or just the social isolation component that you spoke about. One of the things that we would see is when we were having a really heavy surge and people were being recommended away from the ERs and places except for in emergent situations with COVID. We did see some of that traffic reduce, but as soon as those kind of recommendations would subside a little ways, we'd see that population with those struggling with the stress of the coronavirus would increase significantly at that point in time. So there was a little bit of an ebb and flow throughout that time frame, but we have definitely seen a huge impact with the coronavirus, and it's definitely something that has been have created a lot of struggles for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Nick.
You said you are adult only. What do you do with the youth or 18 and below? Where do you direct them?
Typically the youth go to one of the programs like Holly Hill in Raleigh or Old Vineyard. We'll take some of those patients as well. There are a few programs around the state, but nothing locally that will work with the youth population.
Is there anything projected that we might be looking at doing something for youth as well?
At this point, we don't have anything on the line, but we're always looking at options and resources and really looking at, if we had a funding source to be able to provide that service and, bring those beds online, that's something that we would absolutely be willing to look at.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning and for the update, and thank you for the good work you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, next, I believe we have a workforce development update. Ms. Stewart, would you like to introduce those folks for us?
I'll be glad to. We're trying to set up some visuals for you. We have with us today Charlotte Leach and Anitra Hart, and they're going to give you an update on NC Works and the Workforce Development Program in Harnett County.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Charlotte Leach with Harnett County Workforce Development, NC Works Career Center here in Harnett County, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview about the services we provide. Under WIOA, which stands for Workforce Innovation Opportunity Acts. We provide 4 services to adults, dislocated workers, youth, and employer services. Our youth adult services are individuals that receive TANF, food stamps, disadvantaged, underemployed, or underemployed. Our dislocated are individuals that lost their job due to no fault of their own. Our youth program is 16 to 24. Individuals that has dropped out of school, reading and math below a 8.9, or teen parent, foster child, former foster child. Our employment services we provide are workshops. We also do job fairs. We provide keying for job orders for employers, and we provide on-the-job training and work experience to employers that's looking for individuals to fill positions. We also, I'm also going to go our mission. It is our mission to provide a high-quality customer service to employees and citizens by establishing a customer-centered workforce system that will produce well-educated, high-skilled workers to optimize their potential earnings for the global economy. Anitra Hart is going to come, and she's going to go over the NC Works from the beginning to the end as far as the services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The NC Works Career Center is a one-stop shop. It's a one-stop center where a customer and a citizen of Harnett County can come in and receive all the services and resources that they need at one time. It is our duty to be sure that when an individual enters the NC Works Career Center, that they have left with the resources that they came in or any questions answered that they had. So in front of you, we have the three systems that individuals will come in and have when they come into the office. We have the Welcome Center, we have Skillsville, and then we have Employability Services, which is employment skills. An individual will come into the office, and the first thing that they get when they enter our office is the orientation. They're greeted at the front door. They're provided an orientation on the services that we have inside our office. We also provide them the information of our partners that we have inside of our office. And then we assess them to see what services that they need whenever they come into the office. We have many individuals who come in that may need to file for unemployment. We assist them with that. One of our partners is DWS, which is the Division of Workforce Solutions, Department of Employment Security Commission. So we do assist them with completing their unemployment online. And then we have a representative that is in our office to assist them with their employment needs or any questions that they have for filing for unemployment. We also assist them with getting registered on ncworks.gov, which is the North Carolina State database from Department of Labor that we utilize, and DES we utilize as well for them to go in to do job search, as well as they can take free online training to gain additional skills. And then we also have them provide them with the resources that we have in our local community. We also partner with Central Carolina Community College. If an individual comes in and they would like to go to training and obtain a short-term or long-term training, we assist them with that through our WIA programs that Ms. Charlotte just referenced. We also have partnerships with vocational rehab. If an individual comes in and we assess them and we feel as though that they need a referral to VR, then we provide them with that referral. And these partners that I'm mentioning, they are located in our office. So they have space in our office, maybe 1 or 2 days a week that they come in and they are sitting there to provide any services that we have to refer them to. We also have a partnership with Senior Community Service Employment Program, which is your NCBA. We partner with job counseling and training program services for veterans, career and technical educational programs, Perkins Career Center Technical Education. So if an individual comes in and they want to apply to go to school and they need to apply for the financial aid program and get Pell, we have an individual from Fayetteville State University who comes in from the EOC Center to complete those FAFSAs for them. We also have trade adjustment assistance programs, employment and training activities on the community service block grants. We also partner with Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we also have TANF unless the North Carolina governor determines that they do not need it to be a partner. And the last one is programs authorized under the Social Security Act. So whenever they come into the office and depending upon the services and the needs that they need, we assist them to the best of our ability. We provide referrals to Department of Social Services for if they need to complete, if they want to apply for food stamps, Medicaid, child care, some of those services. And then we also provide them with referrals to jobs. Now, we assist with jobs. We often hold job fairs. We also provide employer services to the employers here in Harnett County. We provide them with on-the-job training and work experience. And also, if any employers want to house any job fairs on-site or off-site, we accommodate that. We assist them with that. We also provide them with the job seekers that they need to fill those positions. Currently, right now, we are on schedule to meet our performance because as an NC Works Career Center, we have to meet a performance on individuals gaining work and earning sustainable wages in employment quarters 2 and 4. And so this year, we are on target to meet our performance measures for individuals who have gained employment and have sustainable wages during employment quarters 2 and 4. And then as well as our performance for last year, we met it at for employment quarter 2 for youth, we met it at 78.6%. Employment quarter 4 for youth, 73.3%. For dislocated workers getting back into the employment field, quarter 2, it was 70%. Quarter 4 was 60%. And for the adults, employment quarter 2 was 82.4%, and then the adult for employment quarter 4 was 76.5%. So the NC Works Career Center is very vital in the county of Harnett. We assist customers prior to COVID. We would assist between 1,000 to 2,000 customers a month. So NC Works Career Center is a very big hub when it comes to individuals coming in and getting the services that they need on a day-to-day basis. We have individuals who come in who recently came out of incarceration. So we have a program we have an individual who we assist them with trying to get some of their records expunged. We also recently was working with Ms. Charlotte as well as Commissioner McCoy in regards to the second chance program for individuals who have been incarcerated and have criminal record background. So we assist every individual with all needs that they have. If we have individuals who come in that may not necessarily have been incarcerated or have criminal records or dislocated work or anything like that, but everybody gets all the services that we provide in the NC Works Career Center. And foremost, and I would like to say that I missed before, that our veterans are first priority whenever they come into the office to receive any services. Whenever we have any jobs available, they have first priority in gaining those jobs. We also be sure that we have referrals to our veterans rep here in Harnett County. And then we also have a DVOC that is within our local area Triangle South Workforce Development Board to be sure that the veterans get back into employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments any commissioners would like to ask?
Just thanks for what you do. Appreciate you.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation. Yeah, I believe next we have a Harnett County growth update. Mr. Locklear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay's going to pass out some information. We were going to do a PowerPoint, but we decided to give you some papers that you could take home with you because I know you love reading.
That works for this dinosaur, sir.
No, it's been a while since we've had an opportunity to get in front of you. Everybody unless you've been under a rock, realizes that Harnett County is growing unbelievably in the last 2 to 3 years. And so I think it's important for us to come together from time to time to actually put some numbers and let you know exactly where we sit as a county as far as permits and houses are concerned, as well as the commercial aspect of it as well. Given our setup this morning, I'm going to do my best to try to walk you through what Jay has just recently handed out in front of you. But for the last couple of years, we had a system where we provided a report that went out to everyone for a while, a couple of years ago, but we didn't think it became very cumbersome for us to do it, and we had concerns over the accuracy of the report. But since we've moved to our new software and the fact that we've now had 3 years with that software, it's really made it a lot easier for us to be able to provide a report. And we think it's important that you all obviously get something each month that you can look at and kind of know where things stand as far as growth is concerned. So Jay, and I got Jay with me, and I also have Brad Sutton with us too. He's the chief building inspector too, and he's responsible for a lot of the permitting things and the numbers that you see in this report. So if they're all wrong, you can call him. But that's why I asked him to be here today. No, but I
You wanted to put a face with a name, didn't you?
That's right. He's also the guy that comes out and condemn your house, or if you have an inspection, he's that guy. But no, we wanted to put together a report that we felt like was simple in the fact that anybody could pick it up and really understand maybe what the numbers are. So we have a whole host of things that we could add to it and really give you a report this thick, but we broke it down to what we think people really care about, and that's generally single-family homes, the number of COs, so an actual home, that there's a person that's going to move into that home, or if we've issued a permit. When I say single-family development, that means we've issued a permit for a single-family home to be built. A CO, the house has been built, so it's been finalized. And then we also included manufactured homes and their COs as well. And we included all other residential permits, because you could have a ton of different types of permits, whether it's someone changing out an AC unit or doing something simple like that. And then we also included our commercial permits and then our total permits sold. And the one that we follow and track a lot is the revenue from our permits. So this that you have in front of you is that report that's sitting there, and that's this year's. That's 2021, and we just recently developed this look. So this will be the one that you'll receive every month, probably via email, in a PDF format. So if on this side of that report is what I just mentioned, the building inspections, the permit numbers, and all that good stuff. And on the back side of that, and you would get it obviously in a different format, is what we call, this is really planning and zoning projects. So all of those are considered projects. So when you hear projects, that usually means it's on the planning and zoning side. And that can mean a commercial site plan, that can mean a subdivision, it can mean a whole host of different things, but mainly that's Jay's side of the house, so to speak, when we're dealing with projects. And so if you look at that side over there, we've had 19 developments. That's 864 lots. This is year to date on that. We've had preliminaries applied for, and when you say developments, that's final subdivisions. So that means that there's a street in front of it, there's lights, and it's ready to be, the lots are ready to be sold. And then preliminary subdivisions are obviously exactly what that is. That means that they're in the preliminary stage, which is very important because that kind of gives you an idea of what's on the horizon, what's coming at you. And you can see there's 1,475 lots that's been preliminary approved thus far this year, or this fiscal year, I should say, and in 18 different developments for that. Minor subdivisions, that's when someone's breaking up a lot or two for their kid, or they just have a lot and they want to separate it, which those count too. And we've had 179 lots created through that way of doing business. And unfortunately, we've only had 18 commercial site plans, which we love all that we get, but we could always use more when it comes to the commercial side of the business. But that's 474 projects. and their revenue is $316,000. And I didn't mention the revenue on the other side with our permits. Right now, we stand at 1.1 million on our revenue, and that's about where we would do for a whole year for the last 3 years, because the next page that you have is kind of a comparison report. We received this report again. It's kind of in a even more simple format. But as you can see, FY18 we just did right at $1 million, and 1920 same thing, right at $1 million, almost identical to that. And you can see we still have 3 months left to go in this fiscal year. So if the projections hold true that we received from the budget officer, then we're looking at a revenue of around 1.6 million, and that's the highest I've seen it since I've been here, at least. So that is where you stand by the numbers with growth. I think a lot of times the numbers can be overwhelming, and you really don't get a really good idea of what it looks like. So we always have to kind of go to a map to make that happen. And honestly, we use this map that we have, and mostly you've always seen this map that's sitting in front of you that looks like this. You've seen it for Northwest. So it's important that we no longer talk about just Northwest, we talk about the entire county. So this map, it's not, in the map making world, it's not the prettiest of maps, but it's very, it shows you exactly where things are at and where we're at from a development standpoint. So it's no big secret, we're growing in 2 parts of this county, and that's Northwest, where we've been growing for the last 3 or 4 years, and then also down in the western part of the county, over in the Highway 87, up in that corridor. And the map shows that that's where we're growing as well. So, and it gives the number of subdivisions that we have there, and it also gives the number of lots that each one of those have. We believe that some type of automated map, interactive map, is probably going to be the way to go in the future for something like this, just so it doesn't look so jumbled. But to get us through today, this is what we have for you here. Jay and his group ran some numbers that are kind of eye-popping a little bit, but it's in the top left-hand corner of that map. It's under key facts. There's 61 new or continuing developments taking place right now, and there's 10,464 lots that are currently under review in this county. That's a big number, and I tell you why that's different than I can remember back 10 years ago when Western Harnett was the only place we were really growing, and we would drop an 8,000 lot number out, but one of those was 2 subdivisions. Well, that was basically 2 subdivisions, Anderson Creek Club and Lexington Plantation, which Lexington Plantation never reached its full potential, but it did have, and it still does, 6,000 lots in the preliminary, but they're restrained by different utilities and transportation issues and things like that. So this is different. This is 10,000 lots all over everywhere in different parts of the county versus in 1 or 2 large subdivisions that like we had 10 years ago. If you use the numbers that you get from the census, you're looking at 26,367 new residents, potential new residents, and 4,800 new students. And our roads, which is an important part of what we do every day, 104,640 new vehicle trips that could get out on our roads throughout with all this new growth. So it's eye-popping. On the back is another map that this one's not a very pretty map either, but they didn't save our last heat map, so they had to recreate this map. But this is kind of it shows you where you're growing and kind of the hot spots. It is what it is with heat. I mean with growth. Obviously the red is more intense growth versus the other colors on the map. So take that one for what it's worth. It basically says what I just told you. We're growing in 2 areas, Northwest, between 210 and 401, and then obviously in Western Harnett. So that is where you stand as far as growth. And like I mentioned, hopefully you will start receiving, I'm not sure exactly the vehicle, how we're going to get it to you yet. You may just get an email from us, or it may be in some packet provided to you from the manager's office. But you'll receive these every month, so you can kind of keep an eye on where things stand as far as, revenue, which is a good indicator of growth. Obviously, the number of permits and single-family developments and things like that. Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. McCoy?
Do you foresee any growth going south? On 210 going south? I don't,
Well, 210 South, the growth, at least that I've heard, and I just heard this yesterday, there are utilities out 210 South, and we're not growing there yet, but there is the potential for Lillington to grow there. And so, the town of Lillington they went out several years ago and annexed a subdivision out there called Vandercroft, which you may pass it on 210 South.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they have a sewer line that runs out there. So
Okay.
anything that may go down 210 South to Vandercroft, you could potentially see them you could see that developer saying, hey, we'll be annexed into Lillington. So while we're not seeing that, there is some talk that I've recently heard as early as yesterday that there is some movement taking place out on 210 South.
One more
401 same
question.
way.
Without the construction of homes and all, let me take this off, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Without the construction of homes here in Harnett County, because of migrants moving into the county, will we have any land left for economic development growth?
Right.
Because that is one of the things that I'm really interested in, economic development growth. But we have got to have something to offset taxes that we need here for this county. We need retail, and we also need retail taxes, and we need taxes from businesses here in this county. So where do you see that going?
Well, I tell you what, I was with Coley yesterday, and he's working with economic development as far as trying to get some retail into this. And
They gotta have it.
the message that we received from the two gentlemen that we met with yesterday, and I know Coley has set up several different. He's doing a lot of work on that side, trying to get folks in to really look at the retail. But the message that you're always going to probably get is you get the houses first and then you get the retail. And so we're obviously getting the residential side of things. And I think it's important for us to keep doing what we're doing, getting out in front of folks like we were yesterday, getting out and having these big hitters that come in and know what they're doing when it comes to encouraging these retail anchors and folks like that into the community and try to get these numbers in front of them and say, hey, look at us. We're not just a bedroom community. We want your commercial, and we're here too. So you want to add to any of that?
Good point, Coley Price, Assistant Manager. Good point, Ms. McCoy. And we are doing just that. I think what the planning department has done with the Northwest Plan has allowed us to do that as far as putting that in gear for land use, for commercial activity of what you're saying. And just like what Mark was saying, now we've got to bring the retail folks in here. And what I want to hear from the retail folks is, are we ready? What can go here? And if we're not ready, what do we need to work on? Because he's right, rooftops do bring all that, just like what you're looking at in the western end. We went over this whole entire county yesterday, north, south, east, and west, and took 2 commercial developers out. So we're meeting again with another one in a couple of weeks, and we're going to continue that process because I know each of you see that, and you're exactly right. We have got to concentrate on commercial and retail growth. And that's one thing I think that hopefully the consultant that we just put in place as a board will kind of pinpoint that as far as the priorities of where we stand, what's going on, and kind of what we're up against. We look at transportation, we look at utilities, we look at resources, and we look at water, sewer, and things of that nature. So we are continuing to look at that strong, but I mean, good point. I mean, we've got to continue looking at retail.
Well, I'm glad to hear that simply because I was born here and raised here. And for many years, we wanted some different retails as well as nice restaurants and all of that coming into the Littleton area here. And for many years, all I was told was you don't have the population growth. Well, now that we have the population growth, I'm hoping that we are moving in the right direction. And from your report, from both reports, it tells me that we are moving in the right direction. But my next worry is, will we have any land for it?
I think that's where the land use comes in, as far as the master plans that are being put together. I think Mark and Jay can speak a little bit more to that, but I think we've done a really good job out on Ray Road and that area in 87 where we were at yesterday, that commercial and retail is there. And then the Northwest plan that was adopted a few years ago does call for that in commercial nodes. And that's something that we have to look at as staff and as a board. If that needs to be amended as fast as we're rolling, then that's what we need to look at, because it is happening so quick. That is what, it is a concern as far as what's bringing in here, but how you manage it and what you have in place with your standards and the connections and relationships you make is what Harnett County is going to grow into. So we're excited about that opportunity to keep that track open.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Locklear, Mr. Nickel?
I've got one. Is this report available online for the public? Make it available? I've had a couple messages.
Yeah, we absolutely will. If we don't have it, I know we have some stuff on there, and you can search all of our permits online now, but you're kind of hearing it first. So once
Gotcha.
we kind of handle this today, we will make sure we get it out there so folks can get it, because it's easier for us for folks wanting to get the numbers. If it is a retail person who's looking for that, there it is right there sitting in front of them.
That's right.
We have just for the board and anyone that's listening, we have a current projects tab under the planning section. We'll tag it right there if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're working to make our website better as well. It's a work in progress, has been. All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Locklear.
Looks like I'm gonna be up here for a minute.
I think y'all get to keep the floor for a
Yeah,
little bit, okay?
I'm gonna hit these next ones, should go pretty fast. The first thing that we do have a rezoning coming up for your meeting, this coming Monday night. It was a random situation where we were not even sure why it was zoned like that. It was, no issues at the planning board. It's a request to rezone. I've got the text amendment sitting in front of me. It's commercial to RA 30. It's over on Highway 55, and it's currently split zoned. And it's some folks trying to get their property all zoned one way versus being commercial. It kind of sits out in the middle of nowhere. So no issues. We supported it. There was no one in opposition, Jay, at the meeting. So that one's kind of easy. And the next one, which talks about manufactured home parks, we went out to, we do a manufactured home inspection every 2 years on our manufactured homes. And we realized that through the years, we've had issues with folks. When you add covered porches, large porches, sometimes in manufactured home settings, parks, we had a real issue with folks enclosing them and making them bedrooms out of them, really. And it became an issue because that's not a manufactured home. That's not what the intent is. And so we were having that, and you can't really attach anything to a manufactured home per building code because then it makes it's not how it's meant to be. So for years we had said you can have a 10 by 10 deck on the front, but you couldn't cover it. And what we realized just recently going out, and as these manufactured homes have turned over through the years, folks coming in and no issues of their own, they're just trying to make it better. They've created steps going into the home, and they added, say, a stoop to it to cover it. So on a rainy day, you're not trying to get into your house like that. So, and that's technically not allowed in the ordinance now because it is covered, and they're not attached. And so Randy in our office, who handles that for us, we talked about it, and rather than going through an enforcement side of a thing, we thought that it might make more sense if we didn't loosen our standards a little bit to allow for that. It makes sense, I believe, for a person who's trying to make their manufactured home look be better and have a better look to it, so to speak. They should be able to do that. So basically, this text amendment it does that. And it just reduces it. I think it keeps it to the size of, I think it's 100 square feet, so you don't have it. So there's no worry of actually enclosing it to create a bedroom with it. So that's basically there was no issue with that with the planning board, and it was completely supported by them. Any questions on that one?
How big did you say? How many square
I think
feet?
it's 100 square feet.
Okay.
It's 100 square feet. I've got them, I've set it somewhere.
Yeah, I was just looking for that, and you said it, and I was not paying attention, so, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about that. Commissioner Johnson, what kind of materials are you going to allow the people to use to cover these areas?
Generally in the ordinance, the way it is they have to use building materials that are intended for that. So
No tarps, anything like
no
that?
tarps, no,
Okay.
it would have to be, obviously if it's a roofing material, it'd have to be something intended for roofing.
Okay, that's good.
and
Thank
things
you.
like that. And they may even be, do we inspect those, Brad?
Yes.
Yeah, so it'll have to be built to North Carolina code, so I don't think tarps are allowed.
Okay. Hope not.
Any other questions on that?
Any other questions on the second one? Okay.
The next one is a little bit more complicated to a degree. It's not really complicated in how it's written, but it's something that we certainly need to think about because we're obviously building a new elementary school out in this county, and we're going through the site plan phase of that. And that group approached us being the planning department, with the idea of reducing the amount of required parking spaces for the elementary school. And what are those numbers, Jim? The required, they're wanting.
Three per, we require 5 per.
We
class.
require five per number of square feet, and then they want to move it down to 3. And so we took that, we thought, well, maybe that's not a bad idea because we had it for elementary schools, high schools, and middle schools. We had them all lumped together in the same grouping. So we reduced it down to 3 for middle and elementary schools, and left high schools because high schools obviously have the sporting events and things like that where they would need some additional parking. So we left that one alone and moved it for the elementary school and the middle school. When we went to the planning board said, wait a minute, I've went to several things at elementary schools and especially middle schools, and maybe we even probably should have thought about the middle schools as well. And there's several events. We're parking all over the place as it sits. We couldn't imagine reducing the number of spaces at that. So they denied it at the planning board meeting. So Jay and I came back and we said, yeah, the middle school, I forgot about, they do have sporting events and things like that. So we kept them back with high schools and moved back to the 5. But the elementary school, we wanted to speak with you all about and get your feelings on how that, on how your feelings are as far as reducing that. We looked around at a couple of different places, and do you have that sheet real quick? Looked at Wayne County, and they do it 1.5 seats per their assembly. So the largest assembly, that's how they do it. And oddly enough, when you do that, based on the school that's being in place, what we ran up this morning, it's the exact same amount that we require now. So it's 5 units, 5 there. If you were to go with the Wake County standard, Chatham, they do 5. They do 5. Is it 5 per classroom?
Yeah.
It's 5 per classroom. So they do the same that we have now, and then more. They get really crazy with it, and they do it per class, per teacher, and per office. So we really hadn't done the numbers on that either. So the question to you all are, do you want to do the reduction? I think the reduction came because they wanted to add some additional classrooms at the elementary school. So it took away from some of their potential places that they could add parking. Or do you want to kind of keep it the way it is? That is now.
Any thoughts, commissioners?
We need glass seats.
Yeah.
More than parking spots, I would say.
Also a thought too, and not to persuade you one way or the other, but when you come, sometimes events are just events. It's like the Christmas rush. The old saying is you don't pave the parking lot for the Christmas rush. And, this could be very similar, but I have seen several situations throughout this county at elementary schools where the parking is down the side of the state road. So Commissioner Matthews could probably speak to that more than anybody. So.
Well,
It's a double-edged sword.
yeah, it's a catch-22 either way. you know, basically, you're paying for a lot of asphalt that is seldom used, but when it's needed, it's needed. It doesn't take many events, especially considering as wet as it's been the last couple of years, to where that one event creates a lot of work to get grounds back in order once they park all over them and get stuck and everything else. So yes, I mean, I understand. I also understand, especially with the way building costs are exploding now, probably why that request was made, although I did not know it had been made, because I'm sure they're trying to shave every dollar off they can with what it's going to cost to build that school. But you know, I personally am of the opinion I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. All too often, I think in interest of saving a dollar here or there, we sacrifice up front and end up paying for it in the long run. So my recommendation would be to leave it as we have it. But that's just my thoughts. Anyone else? Okay, is that all you have for us, Mr. Locklear?
No, sir.
Okay.
That's not.
We will,
I think the next thing,
oh, you got some more, okay, go ahead.
yeah, I do. The next thing that I have is there was I think a request, from this
Okay, gotcha.
board regarding, renaming Highway 87, and Paula had asked us to take a look at that. And so we done that. And I have Clint Williams here also with, E911, who handles road naming and all that fun stuff with that. So he's available to talk with that as well. We took the request just as it was sent to us to Drew Cox, who was the new engineer for DOT. It took some asking because obviously Drew's new in his position, and it took us some time to get an answer. So I'm going to read to you exactly what his answer was to us. Mark, my apologies for the delayed response. I wanted to make sure I did not guide you in the wrong direction with this. The short answer is that NCDOT would not be involved with the naming of a section of roadway in this manner. We would view this as a local decision, not unlike the naming of your state-maintained secondary roads for 911 addressing purposes. As you are aware, the issues that would need to be addressed would be coordination with the impacted municipalities, coordination with property owners regarding address changes, modifications to 911 street name signs would be the responsibility of the county. In addition, if there were any NCDOT signs that included the current name of the facility, the requesting entity would be responsible for covering the cost to update the names on the impacted signs. I do not believe that is an issue in this case. A different situation is naming a section of road or a structure in honor of an individual. This would be considered an honorary designation. There is a defined process for this type of request that eventually requires approval by the Board of Transportation. I am glad to answer any additional questions if you have regarding this matter. If you need me, you can reach me. It gives me his phone number. Like I mentioned, it's not really a request that I have received ever, and so I'm just as new at it as maybe Drew is in that regard. I did reach out to Clint because I know anytime you rename or change a street, it affects his office. It can affect his office in a big way, and so Clint, do you want to say anything on what it would require from your side?
Good morning.
To rename the road, the normal process, it would take 75% of the property owners to be in agreement, but it's totally up to the commissioners. Any road name's up to total discretion of the commissioners. So on our end, the way it normally happens, we would go to every homeowner, or if y'all came up with like Barbecue Creek Boulevard, I think is what you wanted to call it, we would put that out to all the property owners. And the biggest thing, it would require like an address change. And that would be the biggest kickback you would get, is people don't want to change their address. But me personally, I think it would help that road because it broke down in so many, it was address it wasn't addressed the best that it could have been. So that would correct that whole road, but that will be the issue is readdressing all the people and the businesses but like there's normally like a $500 petition fee, which that can be waived since it's a county thing doing, and the road signs we can do at the county cost. So it's totally up to y'all. How do y'all want to go? Like an honorary name doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's just a sign on the road, but renaming it like you're talking about, it's going to affect approximately 260 addresses along that road, and it affects the Cameron Post Office and the Sanford Post Office. There's only two that I think that'll be involved in that. So it'd be totally up to y'all. We would be willing to do it, but the only thing I would advise you, you're gonna have some people that's upset changing their addresses. That'll be the only kickback you probably get. But other than that, it'll be.
Is it really renaming it rather than just adding a name? I mean, it's 87. It doesn't have. It's not really a name.
Well, like the people's addresses, like I don't know, 1305 NC 87 North. That's what they're using to get their mail. Google uses it. Everybody uses it. So to make it work correctly, you would actually have to change that like 1305 Barbecue Creek Boulevard. And it'd have to go through the whole Google process, the mailing process, and the whole 911 process. But that, in a normal address change, in the past, the post offices gave us like a year to make this complete. So technically, they should honor both addresses for a whole year. And in the past, when we've done it, it really shouldn't cost the homeowners anything if they change their address. You know, like when your light bill comes or whatever, it's always got a place to change your address. If you do stuff like that free, the only thing that normally costs is like the driver's license if they want to change their driver's license. I think that would be the only cost to the homeowner, besides going through the hassle of having to change.
And then the other thing we realized back when, this is Paula, when we did it back in the 90s, when we did the very first E911 addressing project, people have to change their checks if people still use checks. There are some other ancillary expenses I don't want you to forget about, because that really is what people get upset about. When we went through and changed all those rural addresses, it was very tough. So I just want y'all to know that it's more, I mean, it sounds easy, but it's really complicated for a person to change everything.
Well, from an economic development standpoint, especially down in that area, I think having an identifiable name road is going to really help out that area. I've spoken with a lot of businesses along the 87 corridor, even potential companies coming here, and I just think having that as instead of just a bunch of numbers with a numbered street is going to help out a lot and make that area able to focus on.
Yeah, I think it would help with deliveries and everything also, because they'll be known as Barbecue Creek Boulevard instead of NC 87, which could be in Lee County or Cumberland County or wherever. But that's the only thing that I want to warn you about. You will get people fussing with you about changing their address. That should be the only major issue that you run into. But I mean, our office is willing to do whatever y'all want to do, but that's going to be your only issue.
Any other questions?
Chairman?
Yes.
I think one issue now that you might want to look at if y'all do that is make it mandatory to put new numbers up there, because it's going to change the 911 system when people call in, and the road name and road numbers is going to be a change. And we definitely don't want a delay in response time for emergency. So one thing I would recommend, if you do it, is let's make those addresses, especially residential, put big numbers up there on there in the yard or on the house or something, so we don't have a delay, because it will change the response for emergency vehicles.
Thank you, Sheriff. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Is Barbecue Creek Boulevard the only name that has been submitted? Who submitted that?
That came over on the email, I think.
I'll speak to that. This is Paula. We got it through Commissioner Nickel from the community, from Roger Farina.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other discussion at this time? Thank y'all. Appreciate it. All right, that brings us to Agriculture Advisory Board request for statement of support. Ms. Lambert?
And let me check too. We had some other people that were coming for that. Let me see if they're out in the
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here today representing the Agricultural Advisory Board, who is requesting a statement of support on a recommendation concerning the VAD enrolled parcels being impacted by the Highway 55 expansion project. First of all, I'd like to start off with sharing a little bit and providing an overview about the Voluntary Ag District program as a whole. Agriculture brings annually over $175 million into the economy of Harnett County. A large portion of those dollars stay within Harnett County and are put back into the farm business in the form of supplies and services from other locally owned businesses within the county. The VAD was established in 1985 by the North Carolina General Assembly and adopted by Harnett County in 2009. It's overseen by the Agricultural Advisory Board, which approves applications for Voluntary Ag District enrollment and serves as an advisory group to the county government on matters concerning agriculture. The growth update that you heard today from Mr. Locklear further concretes the importance of the Voluntary Ag District program in Harnett County. We are certainly a growing county experiencing many changes. In a growing county, the VAD serves as a valuable tool to educate both new and future residents of the county. And it teaches them about the nature of the communities in which they're choosing to locate their families in. We have a great partnership with our GIS office, who has developed, in accordance with the legislation and the ordinances pertaining to the Voluntary Ag District, several tools that make VAD properties very identifiable to the general public. And this is all a part of our farmers here making an effort to be good neighbors and stewards of their communities. In 2009, we started the Voluntary Ag District program, and currently we have over 23,000 acres of farmland enrolled in the Voluntary Ag District, all throughout Harnett County. These landowners that are requesting to enroll their property intend to keep their farm and agricultural production for a minimum of 10 years, and the properties have to be actively farmed or utilized for forest products production during that time period. Many choose to keep their land enrolled even after that 10-year period is over, and it rolls over and the enrollment in the program continues. Not just anybody can enroll their property in the Voluntary Ag District. There are several qualifying factors, with the main one being that they have to be in the present use tax value program as a bona fide farm. In addition, they have to follow a proven conservation plan showing that they are stewards of the land. And so with these two qualifying factors, we know that it is actively engaged in agriculture, it is an agribusiness, and the management of that particular property is shown to show proven conservation techniques. Our office, we work very closely with the majority of the farmers in our voluntary ag district, as well as Cooperative Extension and the North Carolina Forest Service here within Harnett County. There are several benefits for landowners to enroll in the voluntary ag district. The number one benefit is so that they can be included in the program, which is such a great educational tool to the neighbors that we have currently moving into Harnett County. Years ago, everybody was directly connected to the farm in some way. If you didn't farm, your parents did. If your parents didn't, your grandparents did. And it's not like that anymore. We're 4 and 5 and 6 generations oftentimes now removed from the farm, and the general public often does not understand what comes along with an agricultural community, which can be slow-moving equipment. It can be noises that come from harvesting. It can be dust that comes from working the land and harvesting. It can be other things that are associated with livestock and animal production. And so farmers see that as a valuable tool in order to help educate their neighbors. We realize that the county is changing and the county is growing, and that's not going to be stopped. And the Voluntary Ag District program certainly does not intend to even suggest that it should. It is an effort for them to educate the public and to be good neighbors to these new folks that we have join us in Harnett County. And we have seen cases where voluntary ag district enrollment has urged these new folks, new families moving into the county to call our office and ask questions about that farm that they're getting ready to purchase property next to. And we're able to put their mind at ease and tell them some about the operations of that property, and just help educate them about what goes on that property, and a little bit about agriculture in general. So that's a very important part of the farming community making an effort to be a good neighbor. Another benefit of the Voluntary Ag District program is that it grants owners of the enrolled parcels to request public hearings if public projects affect their agricultural operations. The intent of this public hearing that can be requested is to allow that farmland owner an opportunity to share with the parties at the public hearing some about their operation, the infrastructure that is present, and the business that is conducted on that agricultural land. Since the inception of the Harnett County Voluntary Ag District program in 2009, we have only had 2 requests for public hearings. So this is not something that happens very often, but it is a right that enrolled property owners do have to request that public hearing so that their voice can be heard and just simply the parties that involved can be educated about the business nature of the property that's going to be impacted by the project. As a result of the Highway 55 project being planned, the Gardner family requested a public hearing to be held. During the public hearing, Diane Johnson with DOT outlined the preliminary plans for the road within the area of the property in question. In addition, the Gardner family was able to explain their farming operations and the infrastructure on the property, which include underground irrigation lines and a center pivot irrigation system, both of which are essential infrastructure for the functions of their farm and not cheap ventures to install. Everyone in attendance voiced an understanding for the need of the Highway 55 expansion, and the Agricultural Advisory Board kept that recommendation or kept that understanding in mind when they issued their recommendation as a board. The first recommendation was made to keep the right-of-ways to a minimum through that area to lessen the impact on the farm infrastructure in hopes of keeping most of the underground irrigation lines. and to allow fields to remain large enough for the properties to remain economically feasible for crop production. So that was not asking for the road to be moved. It was simply asking that consideration be made in the design of the road through that area, and to maintain as minimal of a right-of-way for that road as possible for that particular needed design. The second recommendation was that access to water resources for crop irrigation be maintained by placement of a pipe under the road by DOT, allowing irrigation to be continued for maximum crop yields on both sides of the road. The VAD enrolled properties are on both sides of this road project, and irrigation is conducted with both laid irrigation lines and a center pivot irrigation unit on both sides of the highway. And so that recommendation was asked just for a pipe to be put under the road, just like it would be for water to pass through any other area, so that the farm could still run an irrigation line through that pipe in order to run water to both sides of the road in dry years to be able to maintain that maximum crop yield when possible. The third recommendation was for consideration to be given to the redesign or to the design of this new route along Matthews Mill Pond Road, enabling farm equipment to cross easily. With the farm being located on both sides of the road, oftentimes slow-moving vehicles are traveling along this road. Tractors typically and other slow-moving farm equipment typically can't travel more than about 25 miles per hour. And we were informed during the public hearing that the preliminary plans called for this zone to be 60 miles an hour. Now, I know we can all imagine, what could happen if a vehicle going 60 miles an hour, often 70, in a 60 mile an hour zone, unfortunately, would come up on a slow-moving vehicle and what could potentially happen. It could potentially lead to some very dangerous and unfortunate situations. And so we were simply requesting that the 60 mile an hour zone through that area be reconsidered, and maybe 55 at the very most through that particular area. I drive Highway 55 often between Fuquay and Anger, and I go to downtown Anger very often. And so we all certainly understand the need for this Highway 55 expansion. But what we're here requesting is that the commissioners provide a letter of support for these recommendations made by the Agricultural Advisory Board, to simply recognize that the farming entity that owns property along that area is a business, just like any other business that we have in the county, and that some consideration take place for the type of business that goes along within that area. Today I have here with me Mr. Clay Gardner. He's owner of those particular parcels. And Clay, if you'd like to say anything, you're certainly welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Clay. How you doing?
Doing great, doing great. As she mentioned, we do have the properties, some of the properties being interrupted, or I shouldn't say interrupted, but anyway, intersected from the new bypass road. And I understand, it's not my favorite thing that's going to take place, no doubt, but I understand its progress, and we do need some traffic relief through Andrew and all, so I completely understand that. But as we're doing that, I know personally I have seven pieces of property it's going to connect, and from my farming business, it's going to interrupt, so to speak, and I'm going to have to overcome and give and take, so to speak. And I just ask that as y'all review this, that maybe we can consider this and have a little give and take from both sides, hopefully, and just maybe so we can continue to farm and have irrigation on the other side of the road and things that won't cut us off completely from the property that's remaining where it will touch. But anyway, if y'all consider that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Gardner? Anyone? Thank you, Clay.
And I would just, this is Paula Stewart, I would just like to say too, since some of you are new to the board, I just wanted to kind of read you the function of the Agricultural Advisory Board, just so you kind of know why they're coming to you about this. So the purpose of the Harnett County Voluntary Agriculture District Ordinance is to promote agricultural values and the general welfare of the county, and more specifically, increase identity and pride in the agricultural community and its way of life, encourage the economic and financial health of agriculture, and increase protection from non-farm development and other negative impacts on properly managed farms. There's 7 seats, one from each commissioner's district and 2 at-large members. And I just was going to read you the current Agricultural Advisory Board member list, if that would be helpful to you. I think the chairman, if I'm not mistaken, is that R.H. Bird?
R.H. Bird.
He was going to be here today, but he is under the weather, so he's not able to make it. But L.D. Black from Bun Level, R.H. Bird, C.H. Johnson from Lillington, Cindy Johnson from Fuquay-Varina, Dudley Langdon from Anger, Henry Randolph from Cameron, and Frankie Spivey from Sanford. So just so you know, that's the people that are on this Agriculture Advisory Board that wrote the letter requesting that the board accept their recommendations and do this letter of support. So I just felt like you need a little bit of background since you're new to the Board of Commissioners and haven't really dealt with this issue yet.
We have a very broad agricultural advisory board in terms of the areas of agriculture that they represent. Harnett County is a very diverse, we're one of the most diverse agricultural counties in the state based on the commodities that our farmers produce. And so it's important that our Agricultural Advisory Board be able to represent all of those commodities. And so we have livestock producers, we have row crop producers, vegetable producers. We have 2 at-large seats, and one of those at-large seats represents our forest producers, and then the other one is required to be a representative for conservation purposes. And so that is typically a member of the Soil and Water Board of Supervisors. So it's one of our local Soil and Water Board supervisors. In this case, it's C.H. Johnson. And so we do have a broad range of representation on that board so that they are knowledgeable in terms of understanding the agricultural needs, and they are able to provide, wise advice when needed for the Board of Commissioners and other offices of county government. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from Ms. Lambert? On the third point here, the redesign, the new route for Matthews Mill Pond Road and enabling equipment to be able to cross without having to travel, I guess, on the bypass. Is that what I'm seeing?
That's where we were requesting the consideration of a speed limit slower than 60 miles per hour.
Okay, I
through
got
that
you.
area.
I got you.
So we weren't asking for
So
a complete road redesign.
Yeah, where would that zone be on the bypass that I'm looking at?
It is along Matthews Mill Pond Road through that particular area.
Yeah, I need my glasses to see that.
What's the
right
current speed limit on Matthews Mill Pond Road?
The current speed limit, I believe, is 55.
It's 55. If you don't mind.
Is there any,
show
I'd like
me where
to ask, I'd like to ask DOT a question. Is there
Lynn.
any plans to make this a 60-mile-an-hour zone on Matthews Mill Pond Road?
If it would be appropriate, I wasn't sure of the format, but if
Please.
you could speak, maybe that would be a good way to start the conversation. If we could address the design issues a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm Jennifer Evans. I work with the Department of Transportation. I'm a team lead for project managers across this East team. So I was not in this position during the time of the public hearing that was held. But we have a copy of the letter that was obviously on the screen that's been discussed this morning. And just overall, I want to assure you that we have made consideration for these requests. I don't think that there has been maybe adequate follow-up from our end of things. And so just in context, I think around August of 19 is when our funding crisis that I know you all are well aware of kind of hit, and things kind of came to a weird halting stop. And really, we've been on suspension almost through that whole time, maybe until November, this past November. And because we had that break in the project and we've been kind of sitting still, and when we got permission to move forward, in order to try to hold the construction schedule that has been planned and announced to the public, we really tried to push to go to right-of-way very quickly. And so there's been a lot of activity happening, and there probably should have been some better communication on our end back to this. And so I just wanted to at least give Jeff a chance to talk about those 3 bullets that we just discussed and what we have done on our end and where I think we can go with some of these things as we move into right-of-way negotiation process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. And as Jennifer mentioned, I had an opportunity to attend the public hearing and had a chance to meet Mr. Gardner. And that was sort of my introduction to the project back when we began the preliminary design. So we're here today to address the letter specifically from Mr. Byrd to Diane Wilson that was dated March 22nd, 2019, that were regarding recommendations made by the Harnett County Agriculture Advisory Board. We're in receipt of that letter, and we have been evaluating it and carefully considering the recommendations that were made. And we would like to provide the following responses as part of these 3 bullets that were outlined a while ago. The first one, right-of-ways need to be kept to an absolute minimum to lessen the impact on farm infrastructure. I believe she read it aloud. NCDOT's policy is always to minimize the amount of right-of-way that is acquired as part of a project. In this case, the 200 feet is the proposed right-of-way as part of the NC 55 bypass. And we typically run a typical section, a typical width due to the 30-foot median, the 4 lanes of pavement, paved shoulders, and the arterial ditches in order to fit within that 200-foot width. And if we're up high or down low, it might get a little bit wider. And I think through this area, it's a roughly 200 feet throughout the area of Matthew Mills Pond Road. The second recommendation was access to water resources for crop irrigation be maintained by placement of a pipe. The department has evaluated that as well, and even though in my 26 years of roadway design, we haven't had that type of request, but we will be glad to work with Mr. Gardner or others as necessary to determine the type of pipe, the size of the pipe, and where that pipe would best be located in order to address the comment. So we'd love to work with you guys or Mr. Gardner or others that would be helpful and beneficial in trying to identify those dimensions and parameters associated with that second recommendation. The third recommendation, which I'll spend a little bit more time about, of course, is to be given the redesign of the new route of Matthew Mills Pond Road and referring specifically to the way that it's been realigned as a service road. So once we got the letter, Jennifer and other members of the team looked at several possible redesigns of Matthews Mill Pond Road, including 2 different drainage designs. We looked at either using a tail ditch or drainage diversion. I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. But we also looked at a complete redesign of the project to raise NC 55 up over Matthew Mills Pond and also raising up Matthew Mill Pond over the NC 55 bypass. So the first alternative was what we call the tail ditch option. I realize that's some engineering there, but we were trying to lower the 55 bypass in the area of Matthew Mills Pond Road, and what happened was it rendered many driveways along Matthew Mills Pond Road inaccessible because they would be considerably higher than the roadway itself. So from the access perspective, we didn't believe that option was viable. The second option was a drainage diversion, trying to divert the water from Matthew Mills Pond Road to a culvert. That also included lowering the NC 55 bypass in the area, but not quite as much as alternative 1. It proposed to eliminate the pipe crossing at Matthew Mills Pond Road and divert several acres of drainage to the culvert that I mentioned. But what's happening with both of these alternatives, anytime we lower NC 55 bypass from a design perspective, it's getting lower than the existing groundwater elevation, which actually is problematic for multiple reasons, but especially wells in the area that might be used for irrigation. So both of those alternatives were not deemed viable simply because they were lower than the groundwater elevation, which would impact wells and irrigation. The third alternative that we looked at to the current design was taking the NC 55 bypass up, completely over Matthew Mills Pond Road. In order to even make this work, we would still have to lower Matthew Mills Pond a little bit, just because geometrically it wasn't going to work to raise it to where it's 16 feet higher than the existing condition. So we raised it as much. We end up raising NC 55 by about 15 feet to make it work. But then, of course, we had to lower Matthew Mills Pond to provide the vertical clearance. And I think to answer one of the questions that came just a few minutes before I spoke, we wouldn't propose to change the speed limit necessarily on Matthew Mills Pond. It's just a statutory 55. And that's from one end to the other. So there's really very little advantage to change it even within the project area. But we haven't, but that's certainly a recommendation that we can consider today. So we try to raise it to 15 feet, but once you lower Matthew Mills Pond Road, from a drainage perspective, it wouldn't work because we ended up creating a low point within the road itself, and we couldn't find a way to drain it. So it made that option unfeasible as well. So this led us back to our current design. This is the design that's shown on the NC 55 right-of-way plans. The current design includes the service road. We found that to be the only viable option that would provide access to all the driveways and properties along Matthew Mills Pond Road, and it keeps NC 55, the bypass, above the groundwater elevation. So it keeps from complicating the engineering issues associated with changing it. This alternate was selected and is shown on our final right-of-way plans. A set of those have been brought in case you guys wanted to see that. And Mr. Gardner's property specifically is shown on plan sheets 22 and 23 as part of our final right-of-way plans, and they're available. So as you are aware, the forward motion of this project has been hindered several times. As Mrs. Evans mentioned, the project was suspended, reinitiated, and then suspended once again, and now it's been reinitiated, which is why we're here today to move it to final completion. We're hopeful that this project will now be able to come to fruition. NCDOT began right-of-way acquisition last month in March of 2021, and we anticipate construction beginning in late 2022, which will allow time for the department to acquire the rights-of-way, the easements, and to move any utilities that are necessary as part of the project. Mr. Gardner should be contacted shortly by a right-of-way representative to further discuss his particular properties. And that's all that I have. Thank you for your time.
Any questions anybody would like to ask?
Jeff, is it worth noting that the 60 mile per hour is design speed?
Oh, yes. So because this project is a bypass, of course, it's NC 55 bypass intended to bypass a portion of Angier, and it's a controlled access facility, which means access is controlled and limited to driveways and intersections. We typically will design that for a 60 mile per hour and post it 55, which I believe is the way that 55 is posted in most cases today as a statutory statewide limit.
I just thought that was important
Yes,
to
thank you.
clarify that.
Yes, let me make sure I understand. So as far as bullet one, no issues there as far as DOT is concerned about making the right-of-way as small as possible or tied up as the least amount of land possible.
That's correct.
Okay.
In our opinion, sure.
Right, bullet, sure, and I know we're early in that discussion too. In bullet two, no issue as far as DOT is concerned in working with Mr. Gardner to make sure there's a way for him, for his water to be able to get from one side to the other underneath.
That's correct.
Okay.
I will share as an example, we've had projects in the eastern part of the state. We actually had wildlife crossings, culvert crossings for animals to go underneath an interstate type facility, a closed access facility. So this could be a similar presentation in that it's for irrigation, not for animals. But certainly, work with the property owner to make that complete.
Very good. And then on bullet three, so as far as moving equipment from farmland on one side to farmland on the other side, what would that involve at this point with the design that you've adopted?
So in the case of Matthew Mills Pond Road, it is being severed by the bypass. It will not have an at-grade crossing. So someone would be expected to go around the service road to Highway 210 and then down 210 to other connected roads to get to the other side of the bypass roadway.
So, Mr. Garner, what does that mean to your operation?
Yeah, so I think if I understand correctly, so to access, we would have to take Service Road 210, is that right? Turn on 210, access the bypass road, U-turn, and then exit the bypass road, is that correct?
Yes.
So don't.
Depending on where you're going.
Yes, if I'm trying to get to the other side of the bypass road. Okay. So in order to do that, with a tractor running 20 miles an hour, we'll have to put family members or employees or myself, one on it like that, change lanes, make a U-turn on the road, change lanes again, and then exit the road, as best I understand.
But how long would this put you on the bypass, or where that?
As far as the one I saw the other day, I think it's gonna be a lot better. I don't want to speculate. So, but I think you'd have to go. I don't know how far the first turnaround. I don't know what you call it, the area where you can make a U-turn, so to speak.
That's right.
From 210, I guess.
Yeah,
if I'm going that direction.
Typically, those are spaced at least a quarter mile apart.
Okay. But it would create, or it is going to create some issue with getting across that bypass.
Yes, sir. Yes, with that, and also tractor trailers, and I know they're made sizable for that, but still, when you get on and go a quarter mile, you're never getting up to speed and those type of things.
At one time, there was discussion about changing the design of that interchange between 210 and the bypass. Is that still, what's the status of that, I guess?
So the intersection between Highway 210 and NC 55 bypass would continue to be an at-grade intersection, to where it would be a super street intersection, as we call it, where people would make a right turn and then make a left turn or a U-turn down the way, and then the western side of that intersection would be signalized, simply because of such heavy left turn volumes coming to the oncoming traffic. That leg of it will be signalized, and I believe the right turn will be signalized as well at one of the intersections. But it's not an interchange where it's not grade separated.
Right.
I'm not sure if that was ever figured into the original planning, but since I've been involved with the project, it's always been an at-grade intersection, and can be supported. The traffic supports that configuration.
Any other questions or comments for any of these parties?
Back to the first bullet point, how does the 200 feet that they're proposing of the right of way, how much does that impact or affect you? Are you good with that?
I guess it's at a minimum. I'm assuming, yes, sir. I mean, it affects quite a lot of areas, but I mean, I don't know if there's any other way around it. From what the people told me.
And the only other thing I would add is that, if this wasn't a bad property and this was just a normal acquisition process, these type of conversations would take place during the right-of-way negotiation conversations. And that's where when Jeff said you'll be contacted by somebody, then you'll have an opportunity to review and ask for the things that we've discussed. I mean, obviously, we've talked about some of them, but if there's specific things, the pipes, I would think, would be, we could go ahead and add them, but they would also be appropriate to be added in as a right-of-way revision. Would you agree?
That is correct.
And
We're not exactly sure what would be the best location.
Yeah. And so our normal process would be, we put our design on paper, and then we go to every person, we hear your concerns, and then you work to help us locate that pipe, and then we would get, information back from those conversations as part of your right-of-way negotiation, and then we would do plan changes to incorporate that. So, if that's helpful.
So let me make sure I understand. Are you looking at a possible redesign of Matthew Mill Pond Road?
So the design that we have here and the things that Jeff has discussed obviously means we can't do something where we raise one over the other, or those type of things I think have been eliminated. But as far as the pipe, for irrigation and the location of that, those are things that we definitely can continue to work through as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about the third bullet point, where they're requesting consideration be given to redesign of the
And so
new.
my response to that would be, we have given that full consideration. We have done everything on our end to look at that and make consideration. And I think from a cost and access standpoint, major changes in that area to allow any kind of through movement between the two parcels would be cost prohibitive and not feasible.
Okay.
And I would just like to add, thank you all, DOT, for that information. I think this is a great example of how the Voluntary Ag District program and its ordinance is a benefit to the citizens of Harnett County, because it sounds like from what DOT representatives have shared today that they have taken into consideration the recommendations that were made as a result of the public hearing heard by the Agricultural Advisory Board due to this property being rolled in the Voluntary Ag District program. And had that public hearing not taken place, then these discussions would have come much later in the design process, and the landowner may not have had a chance to voice those infrastructure concerns and operational concerns in terms of their business. So it is a great example of how the ordinance is a benefit to the citizens. And I think in all, we are very pleased to hear the feedback from DOT and the consideration that has been given in terms of these recommendations. So,
Well, thank you, Ms. Lambert, and we certainly appreciate the communication, collaboration, cooperation that has taken place through this process. I do have one question that I think I have heard raised with this discussion that we've had. Is there anything in these considerations that would delay that project at all?
Excuse me. Are there any things within the record?
Right, anything within what we've discussed today would create any delay?
No.
Yeah,
No, sir.
thank you. That, I did want to ask that. And then, Mr. Gardner, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but hearing what we've heard this morning in the communication, do you feel comfortable going forward in, as you continue to work with DOT and with the folks putting this in? Very good. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we're to broadband update. Mr. Hall?
From one infrastructure to another. Let's talk about this. I'm gonna take over, Lindsay. So I've just put together a little presentation. So really this is about an update of where we're at with Cloudwise and the contract that we've signed with them and what we're doing and where we're at this point. And we'll get to why this is kind of prompted today. I don't know if this thing's picking me up very well. Why this is prompted today in just a second as I go through this. The first part is just kind of a reminder of what we're doing. Back in October, we signed a contract with Cloudwise to start doing broadband for us in Harnett County. On top of what other incumbents and other people are doing here in Harnett County, we needed somebody that was going to specialize and bring broadband to a resident that doesn't have access to it right now. So this is kind of the overall plan. The first phase of this, I'll block out that bottom south part of the county. Everything north of the red line is what we're looking for. So we're hoping to get that covered here in the next year or so. We're really getting in the beginning stages of this. So phase one is kicked off. Because of the grant, not getting awarded the grant kind of delayed some things. We were hoping that would happen, so we just decided to go ahead on our own and move forward with Cloudwise and with the monies the county has put into it. And we'll talk about grant here later on in the presentation too. So just to talk about what Cloudwise has done and kind of where we're at. In January, they kind of nailed down the core tower selection, and that's the big piece that I'm coming to you to just kind of review and make sure we're all in agreement, make sure you guys are okay with what we're going to do or what we're talking about doing. They've also selected some vendors, which means the infrastructure they're going to put on the tower, the wireless equipment, potentially the ISPs they're going to use for the backhaul, that kind of stuff. And they've also planned out all the links between all the towers and all the setup of this first initial phase to make sure everything's good to go. So in April, they added on, they've figured out all the frequencies they're going to use with the equipment they're going to put on the towers, the licensing and all that good stuff. And they've selected the core towers and what they're going to really roll out on those and just kind of nailed all that down. I'm just doing this at a high level. We'd probably need CloudWise to really delve into some of these lines, but that's kind of what they've told me they've finished up at this point. The next 60 days, the tower application. So they're applying to all the commercial towers to get access to the towers, put their equipment on it, and then the county also is involved in this, and that's what I'm here today to kind of review with you guys. They need access to 2 of our communication towers kind of immediately. So we're just talking through that, or I shouldn't say immediately, but that's the first 2 that they need to put their equipment on. So in the next 60 days, they're going to look at construction drawings and structural analysis of all the towers they're getting on, kind of nail down all those details, make sure they can put the antennas where they want to, make sure the towers can handle it, and all that good stuff. Fiber identification and selection, again, that's the backhaul side of things. They're just kind of trying to figure out where the fiber is and how they can get the backhaul, the internet, the broadband to the towers that they're going to feed. And then the next steps after here, that's coming pretty quick, but once we decide on what we're going to do today, they're going to start selecting some of our key water towers to get on top of, just to kind of take it to the next level and cover more areas than they have with the big communication towers. And there's permitting and zoning coming. The tower leases are going to be signed. All the equipment's going to be purchased over the next 6 to 9 months. And then the equipment installation is going to start soon too. You know, of course, the nailing down these towers is the first piece of all that. So once they get the towers nailed down, they can order the exact equipment that can put up on each of the towers and get all that working. So as far as our 2 towers are concerned, they need an access agreement to get on these 2 towers. And so this is going to be kind of the precedence that's going to be set for all the future water towers and potential other communication towers that they need to get on. So that's why I'm coming to you today, just kind of talk through what they're proposing in this. So the 2 towers that they would like to get on, as you can see on the map, the northwest, which is now the Oak Ridge Road Tower, used to be called Coaxberry. We're replacing that one. Hopefully that one will go live sometime this month, maybe next month. So we're working on switching that over, but they want access to that one. And they also want access to the one here in Lillington. So let's focus in on the one in Lillington, just kind of give you the overview of what that is. That's one of our emergency services towers. We use it purely for Viper radio communications for 911 and some wireless connectivity back to our towns and some different things too. But they need access to that. This particular tower is sitting right behind our emergency services building. The little arrows pointing to that. Just kind of give you exact, sometimes we talk about these and it's kind of hard to nail down, so I just wanted to show you exactly where that's at, make sure you understood. And that's just a picture of that tower standing behind the emergency services building. The other tower is the Coaxberry Tower, which is the northwest part of the county. Same setup, same size tower, just different location. Same thing, we actually don't have a picture from the top down looking at it because we don't have an ortho that's recent enough, but it's actually located in a piece of property back there on the back left, top left. But the driveway to the tower actually kind of lines up with Revels Road right there. So it's pretty much a straight shot across there, about 100 yards, 200 yards back, I guess. So this is actually a picture of the tower behind all the trees that are there. That's what's there. So these 2 towers, CloudWise wants to put on one about 260 to 270 feet. The one at the emergency services building, the other one they want to put on some equipment about 235 to 245. We brought State Highway Patrol, who has most of the equipment on these towers, so we brought them into the conversation just to make sure they're good with what we're talking about doing, make sure everybody's happy. They gave us some good insights and made sure everything was, the State Highway Patrol doesn't dislike broadband services, but they cause them some extra headaches to think about. And so including them up front is a great deal, and we can keep everybody on the same page, make sure they don't butt heads anywhere along the way. But they were good with the heights that they're requesting. They're good with the equipment they're going to put on there, and everything was real, kept them happy at this point. So looking at what they're kind of roughly proposing of each of these towers. So this is a drawing. This is just an example drawing. They still haven't nailed down details, so that's why I didn't put an agreement in front of you to look at for final approval and thought process. We'll get that to you soon, hopefully, in the next few weeks, so we can get that signed off and moving on. But basically, this is roughly what the Lillington Tower will look like. They'll put a little cabinet behind our building that's existing there, and that'll house all their equipment. They'll have their own electrical meter. They'll do everything there on their own. They'll run their equipment up the tower. So looking at the tower itself under the green circle, that's where they're going to roughly mount the equipment. So, it's just adding on some more stuff to the tower. And then, this is just kind of an overview, aerial view of what the tower would look like with the equipment on there and the 3 antennas that they're going to add to each one of these towers. So just a rough shot of that. So the key information in this agreement that we're still kind of working together on, but they're looking at doing a 12-month agreement with automatic renewal. So after talking to legal a little bit, I kind of let them look over the official, well, I sent it to them so I didn't mess up and miss something major in the agreement. But they said that, it's a 12-month agreement with automatic renewal, but because we've already signed the initial contract for about 7 years, it makes sense, and probably once we sign this, it'll be an automatic renewal for 7 years until that original contract's done. So it'll be a 12-month agreement, automatic renewal. The return tower to existing expansion level. This is the most confusing part of it, but the State Highway Patrol was really adamant about this, and it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. We built these towers for Viper radio and 911 communication. So when we built them, of course, the tower has what would be considered 100% capacity, but we built them with the thought that we'll have some expansion room. So when we put all of our equipment on originally, we only used about 75% of the original capacity. And so about a year ago, Highway Patrol came back and said, well, it's time in our 10 to 15-year plan to add some more antennas to expand our Viper on the Lillington Tower. So then we went from about a 75% to an 80% capacity. What State Highway Patrol wanted to make sure we did is when they put their equipment on there, it did not decrease the capacity that they have available to them. So what will happen, if we go back a slide, is when they put these antennas on, in that blue circle, they'll go back and brace and amplify or increase the capacity capabilities of those particular rungs and that level, so that way they don't decrease the usable capacity. So it'll stay, if Lillington Tower's at 80% usage today, after they put their equipment on for State Highway Patrol, they'll still have 80% usage. So they'll have to make that tower to where we still can add on the same amount of.
So I'm assuming when you talk about capacity, you're talking about the weight of equipment that tower can maintain.
Right, yeah, with the wind and all the other factors weighed in. But yeah, just the big thing is the weight and the extra, lean on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, but they will come in, and so that'll leave us room to grow like we planned on for the next 10 years with the State Highway Patrol and the 911 communication. And this is going to cost, cloud-wise, $3,000 to $6,000 per tower, just a rough estimate that they've got from their vendor. So it's not a huge sum, but it's something that we need to keep in mind. And in the proposed agreement, and this is really probably what I need your insights on how to best do this and what you guys would like to do for today and going forward. The access fee is proposed right now at $50 a month, which, all of us know that's pretty low and pretty reasonable for them, and not for our future as far as costs and stuff like that. But we are in this, and we've just given them a sizable amount of money, and it just doesn't make sense to limit this at this point. And this is something that we could easily allow them to have access to without costing the county a whole lot of money. So it just makes sense for us to go ahead and just set it up at a low rate and go ahead and make an nominal fee, so that way it's always a charge there. And then in 7 years, when this the original contract's up, and everything is going good, and we're hoping they're across Harnett County and they're serving every single one of our residents, then we can talk about what would be considered a normal one, about $1,400 a month. So just to give you a comparison there. So, but for now, this is just an easy way for us to keep Cloudwise moving forward. If we do not move forward with this agreement, it just slows the process down. They have to find other commercial towers. They have to figure out how to make it work without these 2 towers. So they also, based on State Highway Patrol recommendations, they're going to use all possible state contractors to do the tower work, to do the things that are needed. The only exception to that is the people that are actually climbing and installing their specific equipment, because State Highway Patrol doesn't install that type of equipment. It just makes more sense for them to use people that know what they're doing. And then if for whatever reason we break the agreement, they will remove their equipment, and they will also install the equipment in the initial phases of it. Any questions on that? That was the most boring and complicated part. This one I just wanted to note that, and I've kind of already mentioned this one really sets the precedents for the future ones, because they're going to come right back to us probably in a month or so with, I think he said 5 water tower access agreements. So, you know, if we're going to charge them $50 a month for this one, we're probably going to continue charging $50 a month for the others. So if you think there's a need to change that or increase that or reduce that, you know, now's the time to really set that precedent so we can keep moving forward. And I said, as water tower access will be requested soon. And then, you know, just allowing this access, just keep this project moving. I mean, this is part of the plan. In our original contract, we said that we would allow them to have access to any potential tower sites that they thought would be accessible and usable for them to make this happen. And just kind of go back as an overview with all the, on that first map, I kind of showed you the north part of the county and how they're kind of interlinking some things. All the dots on this one is a guaranteed resident that will have internet access that doesn't necessarily have it today. They may have it, but this will cover it wirelessly. But I'm going to transition to grants through this particular slide. Their original proposal actually included fiber, and it was part of the great grant supplemental grant that they had back in the late fall, early winter of last year. And the great grant was really emphasizing fiber infrastructure. And, you know, Cloudwise is not a wireless only company. They want to do what makes the most sense economically for them and for the residents to get broadband. So, you know, this is just an example of what they had proposed in the great grant. They're going to continue pursuing grants on our behalf. So I'm going to transition into our grants from this slide, but, you know that they are willing to do fiber or whatever else, whatever technology makes sense in that circumstance. So we got state level grants and federal level grants. Supplemental grant part 2 from what I can get. So they had a supplemental grant at the end of last year, but now it sounds like there's another CARES Act supplemental grant that's going on and it's in the House Bill 293, but there's really been no movement since mid-March. So we're hoping that maybe they'll move that along again. Okay, maybe not. Well, that's just out there just to kind of let you know. We are trying to track this and look at all these things, make sure that we're staying on top of some stuff. Commissioner Weatherspoon introduced me to something this morning that I read about, and I may mention that in a little bit. Another bill that the Senate's got. There is no great grant for 2021 yet. No real announcements. I think they're going to do it, but they hadn't made any dates or announcement. Federal grants. There is a new one from FCC called Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, and it basically pays $50 a month for people that have to get internet. And it sounds pretty neat, but there's no start date yet, so who knows when this is going to happen. And the problem with us and Cloudwise at this point, and why they care whether they had customers back in 2020 or not, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure there's some nuance there, but you can't get this if you're a customer. If for some reason Cloudwise give residents service tomorrow because they weren't a customer in 2020, they can't get $50 a month for their broadband. So it's really not something that is going to be beneficial to Cloudwise today, but it may be something that we'll track, and hopefully they'll get it going differently next year. USDA, there's some distance learning and telemedicine. We're looking at the options there. But that's, again, I mean, it maybe Good Hope would be a great partner for that kind of thing, but we're gonna have to pull in a medical situation to get that kind of grant. There are Community Connect grants opening up in 2021, the end of 2021. RDOF is still out there, the Reconnect program, but that's just hard to win if you're not an incumbent for lots of different little reasons. And there's others that we're looking at, American Rescue Fund plan funding that's coming out and possibly in May, so we'll see, we'll keep track of that one. And then there's a broadband infrastructure deployment grant. But it seems like most of the funding is at the state level and not the local, so we'll see if they pass the money down to us in some way, shape, or form. So the top question on everybody's mind is, when will I be done? No. First customer served. I'm trying to nail down Cloudwise on this. And really, it just, the way things are looking, this is my guesstimate, it's going to be early 2022, just by the time it says. Now, if everything goes really smooth, we can get all these agreements going and get the equipment up there, it may be late 2021 where we get some residents on this system. So that's pretty much it, and I'm open to any questions or thoughts at this point. Yes, sir.
Got one. Under the federal grants, have you guys looked into like the VA or like Montgomery GI Bill? You know how the military provides education.
I have
get
not
out
looked.
to go to college. Maybe we can get something through them as well, because I know we get a stipend for living and housing and whatnot when you're active in that. So
Yeah.
it might be something we maybe participate in as well.
Yeah, I'll do some research on that. Do you know of anything specific that would fit into that, or you just think that there's probably something there?
Well, yeah, I mean, someone that may be going to Campbell or CCCC, who's enrolled with the Montgomery GI Bill or any of those education programs that the military offers when you get out.
All right, I'll take a look and see if I can find anything on that. Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
Anybody else have any comments or questions? And I guess I know, and you stressed the plan to, let's do it as quickly and as economically and efficiently as we can to get started, which would be wireless. But, you know, we all know the fiber in the ground is going to be the best option.
Definitely.
And so I think I heard you say that as we're able to transition to that, and if we get some money coming down, that we can designate the broadband, that Cloudwise is fine with helping and shifting and getting that fiber in the ground when funds are available to do that.
Yeah, definitely. They're willing to put fiber in the ground. They prefer that because actually that helps them as far as giving a better service to the customer, and it gives them a lower cost for bandwidth, because the equipment for wireless isn't necessarily expensive, but it takes more equipment to get more bandwidth.
Right.
So.
Sounds good. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time this morning. Okay, next we have designation of Harnett County symbols. Ashley, we'll give you the floor.
All right. Well, good morning. Just wanted to provide you a quick update with what staff have been doing to move this project forward. So a couple of weeks ago, Commissioner Johnson had reached out to me about designating county symbols. So what we're talking about with symbols is similar to what the state did of having like a state tree, state insect, state reptile, or something like that. So we initially did some research quickly online. Cannot really find any other counties in the state of North Carolina who've done that, and very minimal in the United States. So I think this could be presented as a unique opportunity for us to set ourselves apart from other counties, not only in the state, but in the entire United States. So science is not my forte, and animal breeds and plants and stuff like that. So we put together an internal team to kind of help with categories and options. So our internal team that's working with me is Angela McCauley with the Public Library, Paul Hart with Parks and Recreation, Tim Matthews and Selena McCoy with Cooperative Extension, Lynn Lambert with Soil and Water, and then Holly Hargrove with Animal Services. So Commissioner Johnson had given us a few category options that he would like, and then we met as a team to kind of come up with other options. So right now we have 9 categories, and those include the county reptile, county bird, county insect, county tree, county flower, county crop, county fish, and then 2 of the categories we want a little bit more input from you on is we're trying not to make this so extensive so that we have like 80 symbols, because with the animals, it could get that extensive. So we kind of categorize those into 2 categories. That was domestic animal and non-domestic animal. So if you have a specific, the domestic animal would obviously be like dog, cat. Pigs can be considered domestic. Horses, we're very rural area, so what people have as pets, and then non-domestic was obviously like deer, bat, things like that. So if there are a specific category that y'all would like to see broken out from the domestic, we can definitely do that. And so in moving forward with this project, we have developed some options for each category and would like to make this a community engagement opportunity. So we would like to put out a survey that we already have some pre-designated options for each of those categories, and we let the residents here in Harnett County pick what they would like to see for each of those categories. I can tell you, I have learned a lot about different beetles. We have a rhinoceros beetle. I guess that's a big thing here. The different types of oak trees. So I will give a shout out to Paul Hart, who gave us a lot of these options. I did not even know what all was actually here in the county to do that. So before we put anything out to the public, I would like to send y'all a draft of what we have come up with. And I'm including pictures on the surveys because there was a lot of things that I'm like, I didn't even know that animal existed. So we want to put that out to the public too, so they can put name with face with it. So I'd like to send that to y'all to review, provide input, let us know what other categories, what other options you'd like to see in the categories. And then we'll plan to put that out to the public for a couple weeks to a month, and then we'll meet again internally with our committee, discuss and have input, and then we'll come back to you as the board to provide our proposal and let y'all approve what the county symbols would be. Do you have any other thing you'd like to add to that, Commissioner Johnson?
No, I see on the domestic and non-domestic animals, there may be some confusion because there'll be so many available, but the main thing I want to say is how much I appreciate you doing this for us. And this being probably the first in the United States, I appreciate the impact that might have on Harnett County first, Harnett County forward. I will get with you later on the domestic and non-domestic as we talk about that. So.
Okay. And what we'd like to plan to do is, instead of just having dog on there, obviously come up with different breeds, and same thing with the other ones. So we
No mutts, anything, just specific breeds.
Right. Absolutely.
Mark and I both have Yorkies, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
The killer dogs.
Yeah.
Who would we use these symbols? Where would you use these symbols?
I don't
Our
think.
literature and signs and stuff like that. I'm not quite understanding this.
I think it's
Put
going to
them on
be,
this building.
yeah, used more as a community engagement opportunity to get the feedback, but also something we could put on our website that's just a designation. I can see us running some marketing campaigns or things tied to that. It could be an educational piece that we could tie into the different departments to talk about these different animals and plants that are native here in the county. But I think it's more of a showcase of what the county has to kind of designate the symbols.
Oh, okay. I got you now. I'm sorry, I just didn't get it.
Oh, no. I was about to say, this is a project that was presented from y'all, so we're completely okay with moving forward how y'all want to.
Any other questions or comments?
Actually, is this going to go in the newspapers?
Yes, we'll do promotion of the survey, and we'll also offer an opportunity for it to be, even though the survey will be online, we'll offer an opportunity for there to be a hard copy of that if people want. So we'll promote it newspaper, social media, put out the press releases to the different organizations, including our newsletters, and send to our community contacts so that we can get as many people to fill it out.
Thank you.
Another question to ask you. That won't do away with the symbol that we use is for Harnett County, will it? Or it's just added to
No,
it?
like our logo?
Logo.
Yeah,
Our
we're not.
logo symbol.
Yeah, we're not touching anything with our actual branding of the logo. This is just, I would say, a separate project that can be featured on the website, and so
Okay.
people show it's
I got you. I just want to understand it.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's more fun than business.
yeah. So it's more of a fun engagement type thing that we can say we did that's unique.
Something on the lighter side,
Do what?
something on the lighter side when we got some of that
right.
serious stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
states that Harnett Regional Water Capital Improvement Plan that was issued for 2021-2022 includes a project schedule for 2028-2029, which includes the construction of an 8 to 10 million gallon per day water treatment plant to be located on parcel number 2, which is the parcel composed of 26.51 acres. It's my understanding in talking with Steve that both parcel 2, which is the 26.51 acre tract, and parcel 3, which is the 1.3 acre intake tract, should be retained by Harnett Regional Water to accomplish its county water treatment expansion plans. Also in that memo that you received, I think Steve mentioned from the past letters that had been presented to your predecessor board, some possible compromises or other suggestions as trying to resolve this situation with the city of Irwin as far as their offer is concerned. So that's your basic framework that you have before you. With us here today, we have Steve Newshafer, who is the city manager for the city of Dunn. We have Snow Bowden, who is here as the city manager for the town of Irwin. We have Steve Ward, who, as you are well aware, is the public utilities director. And are you Heather?
I am.
Heather Adams, who heads up, I think, the city of Dunn Public Utilities. So they're here to answer any questions, or, Mr. Chairman, if you feel like it bespeaks for the board to make their presentations to the Board of Commissioners concerning this proposal.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Snow. Mr. Newshafer, Mr. Snow, Steve, any of y'all have anything you'd like to say regarding this issue at this time? Mr. Newshafer, I would like to ask a question. It seems to me from the letter, and I think we had a conversation last week about basically the desire is to be able to move your current water treatment plant out of the flood zone so that you could qualify for these grant funds. Is that correct?
The intake, sir, yes.
The intake.
Which is down at the river. Just I guess.
Electrical components at the raw water stations.
Yeah, which is just south of parcel 3.
Okay, so yeah, but I mean,
so that's
your intake's gonna have to be at the river, right?
Right.
Okay, so you're talking about electrical components. Now, your intake currently is down from number 3.
That's correct.
Correct? Okay.
Yes. That's the portion that is eligible for grant funds, and also in conjunction with that, the rebuilding and reconstruction of the existing water plant is really the need for the other parcels. So we have a twofold interest in this. One is we have some funding available from the grant for the intake to be relocated equipment out of the floodplain, and then 2, obviously the parcels, we are essentially landlocked where we're at in our current location.
And so what would the plan be as far as moving those electrical components out of the floodplain? Where would you plan to move those to?
It would have to be out of the floodplain. We'd use that as a criteria. So basically out into the field adjacent to our parcel that we already own down at the river.
Okay, but that's not involved in any of the, okay.
No, sir, only the decision to be able to accept a grant based on a location for the water plant being in the same general area. If we're not allowed to purchase the land where we're at right here and expand on parcels 1 and 2, it would be difficult for us to accept a grant for that if we're going to have to relocate somewhere else.
Okay.
And that's why this is essentially come up at this time, because we do have an opportunity for funding that would help with this particular location.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Newshafer or any of these other ladies and gentlemen that are here? Now, on your existing water plant, so do I understand it correctly? I don't know, remember if it was from our conversation or the letter, that your desire or Dunn's desire would be to build a new water plant from the ground up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's why you would be interested in some of these other tracts of land?
That's right. We would have to maintain our existing plant in operation, and, you know, to be able to build a brand-new plant from the ground up, it would be very difficult to do that on the same site that we have right now.
Okay.
And it's been essentially deemed, you know, almost impossible to do so.
Right.
And therefore, we need more property to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then, Mr. Ward, if I could just ask you a question based on conversation that you and I, Mr. Witherspoon, had yesterday. It's my understanding that there are plans in your CIP going forward to utilize, I believe, what would be track 2 on this map and track 3 on this map. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We started looking at this quite early, actually, but we had a planning study done, a water system evaluation done back in 2017. And we knew all along how valuable those tracks were to these future plans. But that study just confirmed what we knew, and we added it to the CIP for the board to approve. In fact, we talked about it in the first 2 proposals that Dunn brought before the board last year, and how valuable the property was for us. The intake structure is invaluable. It's in the floodplain, as every intake's going to be, but the controls on that intake are about 40 feet high. So there would be no removing of the existing controls. We would just add on to those as we built our water plant there. Our future plans are to serve the north side of the river, at least from Highway 401 east or most of that, and maybe even supplement flow to Johnston County from this new plant, because all our growth is happening in the northwestern part of the county, between Highway 210 and Anger and west back toward Duncan. That's where growth is raging right now. And right around Lillington with the Winston tract acquisition, where we're looking at about 2,000 lots there, in addition to the 7,500 lots we're talking about that planning mentioned something to you about this morning about that growth. So our issue is with our plant on the south side of the river, as I mentioned in my email, we've got to, you know, send all that water, pump all that water underneath the river to get it to this side. So it just makes sense in our long-term growth strategy and planning and water supply strategy to have a plant on that side of the river. We already own that property. We're going to have, Harnett County is going to need to build a water plant on that side of the river soon in order to meet those growing demands. And that's the perfect place to do it. It just makes sense. Acquiring an intake on the river would be extremely problematic. The permitting, if you were to start right now, and I think I talked a little bit about this yesterday, if you were to start right now and we had an engineer, we had every design parameter done and complete, to start that permitting environmental process right now would be extremely lengthy. I'd be surprised if you could get that water plant built from scratch in 5 years if we started today. So that's why it's sitting there in FY29 on the CIP that I will submit this year. And that's why the planning study from 2017 recognized it was going to be in the future, but just how valuable and how much we needed that future water supply. As Mr. Snow mentioned, track 1 there, where the old wastewater treatment plant was located before. Now we completely decommissioned that, and now we pump all that wastewater to our plant here in Lillington. So that tract is no longer needed. The only issue I can see possibly with a compromise there is the line that comes from our existing intake, which is track 3, and goes to track 2 to fill that current reservoir. That's how we fill that reservoir now. And it may, part of that line may be in track 2. So if Dunn decided and the board decided to maybe sell track 1 to the city of Dunn, then the location of that line would have to be finalized.
So part of that line may be in track 1, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, because the reservoir is filled down on the section, if you go parallel out from that corner there, where you see the reservoir, it goes right across track 1 or near track 1 there, and then goes back up to the intake structure. So when we bought these facilities from the town of Irwin, that mapping is not complete. That you got to remember, this stuff was built a century ago when Irwin Mills set this facility up. Irwin Mills provided all the water for the city of Irwin, for the town of Irwin back then. So the mapping's not complete and that sort of thing. So we would have to do some due diligence there if that compromise was reached.
Right, I think we learned that with the construction in New Irwin School, didn't we? That some lines we thought were there weren't there, and some were there we didn't know were there, so, yeah.
That's exactly right. I just wanted to stress to the board the importance of the property for our long-term water supply needs here in the county.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ward while he's up? Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Mr. Snow, would you like to?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'm just here on behalf of the town of Irwin. We support Harnett Regional Water. Our residents are customers of Harnett Regional Water, and if there's future expansion down there, we'd like to see it be Harnett Regional Water. I think with our residents enjoy that partnership, and when the town sold the property, I think the intention was for future expansion with Harnett Regional Water to serve the residents in Irwin and other people. But just wanted to pass that along to you. The town did approach the county a while back about buying the property, and I don't blame them at all. They said that they had no plans at all on selling it. It was track 2. So.
Track 2, yes, I believe Mr. Ward had shared that yesterday, that Irwin had inquired about.
Yes, sir.
Purchasing that back, I believe.
Yes, sir. But we support Steve and his staff, and we appreciate the partnership, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Mr. Snow? Thank you, Mr. Snow. Appreciate you being here today. Heather, I guess you're the last one. Would you like to say anything? Or the last one that I see, but I think is here on this issue, if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Be correct.
Just from this perspective from the city of Dunn, we just don't feel like it's, economical to have 2 water plants sitting on the same hill. I mean, we just don't think that's very economic for the taxpayers for the county, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this topic? Okay. Find my agenda under all these papers I've been looking at. Okay, next we have Ms. Stewart, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Update.
Correct, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've had several public comments, and also we did an employee survey, and part of the questions on the survey were about diversity. So I feel like the best way to kind of go about this diversity, equity, inclusion effort is to start with our own county employees and our county workforce. We have over 1,000 employees, and if we can do some in-house or internal training for our employees to kind of be more aware of the issues that surround our community, that would go a large way into then working with outside entities to further expand it into our communities. So if you remember when Cooperative Extension was here giving an update, Kit Sanders was here, and she mentioned that she was on a task force at the state level working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I partnered up with Kit, and we have talked about what the best way to go forward is We've also engaged with an outside consultant who has ties and family here in Harnett County, and hopefully we can get something going with her soon to provide some initial training for our workforce. So the proposed two of the topics that would be lecture format, which would also have a question and answer component. We can do it via Zoom, or she may come on site. We just don't know what the future holds. So the first one would be called An Introduction to Race and Racial Reconciliation. And the second lecture would be called Bias, Racial Justice, and Communities. If we, as all of you know, anything we do takes time. So creating a more diverse and inclusive workplace is also going to take time. But I feel it's very important that we develop a long-term strategy that will foster inclusive behaviors in our everyday interactions with each other, with our partners, and with our community at large. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm on the same path, or the path that you guys want me to be on, as far as being the county manager and trying to lead this effort. I'm not going to be in the lead since I will be leaving, but I want to turn it over and have it in good hands and have the plan in place so that whoever comes after me can keep it going. And the staff that's here will be already at least have one of these trainings, I hope, under their belt. So I just kind of wanted to follow up as an update on all the discussions we've had, and see if the way I'm proceeding is the way the board would like to see this effort go.
Any thoughts? Any commissioners? Commissioner McCoy?
I've been in conversations with Farmland as well as Mr. Nichols there, because we were assigned to come up with the committee. And I think working with Paula and her search for outside agencies to be able to come in and, you know, set up these trainings, whether they're on Zoom or whatever, or virtual, in person. I think it's given account of what's happening in this country. I think it's a wise move for the county commissioners to make. What do you think, Mr. Nichols?
I agree. I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I do too. And when Mr. Nichols and I met after your assignment, and I did some research myself, because the young lady that's Paula, consultant that Paula is talking to, she's from Harnett County. So I think she would do Harnett County well. Also, we made a decision that we are not qualified people to actually present anything on these issues. And the moves that Paula has made, I am wholeheartedly in favor of. And I think it's very much needed here in this county.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any other comments, questions from Ms. Stewart?
And the only other thing I'd like to say, this is Paula, is I believe this would need to be training under the HR department, because they're the ones that are in charge of handling most of our training program. But I just wanted to kick it off since I had made that commitment to you guys. So that's why I'll pass it off at such time after we get a lot of these, again, the plan in front of you. I want to get a proposal and put the plan in front of you so you can see it's what Kit and I have talked about is you have some lectures, and then you do another survey with our employees to make sure we're hearing and that what we're giving them is what they need. And then we do a community assessment. So it's a multi-level project. So I don't want you to think, again, it's going to happen really quickly, but I think it's going to, if we're going to do any kind of change, we have to be open, and we have to train our people to understand what the real issues are. So even in just talking to Kit and several other, I've taken a couple of classes now on it, I've talked to different consultants, and you know, I'm not even aware of my own biases. So it's not always racial. It could be anything. So, you know, there's some colors I hate for some reason. So it could be anything. So it's not necessarily all about this, but it all comes down to the fact that we've got to change our culture if we're going to have a diverse workforce, if we're going to have communities that get along and can have unity. So that's just, I appreciate the fact. I hope that this is what you wanted and that we are moving forward with it.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Certainly sounds like you're on the right path for what the vision was. So thank you for your efforts in that regard. Okay, and now you have the opportunity for your county manager's report.
Well, I've got one other item before
Okay.
that, if you don't mind. So I had
Oh,
brought
I'm
up.
sorry, I missed one. Yeah.
You're fine. I had brought up an idea of possibly giving our full-time employees and our part-time employees what we would call a one-time benefit supplement. The state does that on occasion. If they cannot give a cost of living increase, they will give a one-time benefit supplement. I feel like our employees have really pulled together and hung in there during COVID-19. We have not given a cost of living increase since 2016. We have not given an overall pay study. We haven't done one since 2017. We are doing a performance pay plan where people can earn 1.5% of their salary annually, but that's very minimal, and we're still having a lot of turnover for jobs that pay more in other counties, other municipalities. So I feel like my thing has always been, I'm always family, and you take care of your family. So this is my work family, and I feel like to take care of our work family is very important. I've been hearing, a lot of their needs, a lot of things have come up, and I just feel like if we could do some type gesture that would show our employees how much we care about them during this time that's been very stressful for everybody. So the one-time benefit, if we did $1,000 for full-time employees and $500 for part-time employees, the cost is around $1.1 million. And as I've told you before, everything we do is about $1 million. So go ahead and know that a mile of fiber is $1 million, a mile of greenway is $1 million, the cost of a one-time benefit supplement is $1 million. So it seems like no matter what we do, it's going to be that cost. But we do have, to fund this, we do have some displaced COVID money again, some of our Corona relief funds that came down from the feds, and we used them for valid expenses, which made us be able to move other money around. So we do have the money to fund this if you are so inclined as to do that this fiscal year.
Question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Nickel.
So the leftover COVID funding, is that going to fund this entirely?
Yes.
Okay, second question, is this for all county employees? Or is this to include sheriff's department, school board?
Only Harnett County government employees that are paid for out of our general fund, which would be there's around 1,000, between 1,000 and 1,200. So it's all county departments, not state agencies, and not school system, because school system are state agencies. So it's just local county. So it'd be sheriff's office, tax office, tax department, finance, all your general government offices.
Well,
Public utilities.
So my schools, my teachers, staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, anybody in the schools?
Again, we're not required by statute to provide funding for those people. The school board and the superintendent would have to come to us and request that. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I don't have costs on that. I don't have numbers for that because they're not under my management. So I don't have numbers for that. I can get it if you would like, but we don't have that.
Yes, I think that would be good to look at that. Ms. Stewart is correct. Teachers and our professional staff are paid for by state funds. However, our custodial staff, maintenance staff, a number of other of our classified employees are paid for by county funds that are allocated to the Board of Education to pay those. So before we really get into looking at this, I would like to see what would be involved for those custodians with the school system that were charged with going in and cleaning classrooms and spaces where positive COVID tests had arisen. They certainly were on the front lines. Our teacher assistants who drive buses every day, certainly on the front lines. I don't see how we can talk about one group and not talk about the whole group. So if you would get that information for us, maybe we can put it on the next work session and revisit that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding that? That's just my opinion, but if anybody disagrees, please speak up. And this would, as presented though, this would be no taxpayer money involved in this bonus.
Correct.
All right. Hearing nothing else, then we'll move on with your report, Ms. Stewart.
Okay, you have before you the draft of Monday night, April 19th 's board meeting. Under the consent agenda, we have the Harnett Regional Jetport requesting consideration of the construction contract for the airfield lighting rehabilitation project. Total contract amount is $1.45 million, and this project was approved under it will be approved under the fiscal year 22-28 CIP. The Harnett County Health Department requests approval to accept additional COVID funds in the amount of $1,089,000 to assist local health departments in testing and implementation of COVID-19 vaccines. Any funds not spent during this fiscal year will carry forward to next fiscal year. And we also have, at the request of Superintendent Aaron Fleming, we have Northwest Harnett Elementary Bond Issuance Resolution. I believe their board has or is going to go forward with that soon, and so they need a resolution from us before May. So our last meeting would be April 19th. So we've got to get that together before the packet goes out for the 19th. Then we have the public hearing that Mark and Jay spoke about on the rezoning. We have the text amendment on the UDO as far as a covered addition on manufactured homes. And I want to make sure that I heard you clearly on the third case for the UDO. I know that about the requiring the parking spaces because I had to step out to go get DOT. Is that going to stay on here or did that need to come off? I wasn't sure.
I think that is that's the issue that planning board voted 5-0 against, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
That's correct.
And so I'll yield to my fellow commissioners as to what you would like to do with this item at this time. You want to include it on the agenda for next week or just remove it?
I think we need to vote on it.
Okay. Anyone else? Let's leave it on the agenda. We'll consider it next week. Thank you.
Okay. And then we'll just have whatever reports that are presented to me will be here. The Veteran Services and the Health, the Health Department are the ones that are there this time. And this is where you'll see the new reports from Development Services. They'll just be on here under the monthly report. The one he gave you today was the first example. So I'll just have Lindsay include that on this one as the first report that they give to you. So the public will be aware that they are going to start presenting that growth information to you. So on the, also on the draft agendas for appointments, we really don't have any appointments to make on that day. So just as a reminder, your appointments that are needed are on the sheet that you have in front of you. So if the public would like to know, we have one vacancy for a physician on the Board of Health. There are 5 vacancies on the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, but this appointment process has been postponed due to the family visitation being suspended due to COVID. We also need to replace one non-participatory member on the Triangle South Workforce Development Board, and it needs to be a joint labor management or union affiliated registered apprenticeship program representative, which we don't have very many of those, so we're working with economic development to find a suitable replacement on that board. And there are 2 vacancies on the Harnett County Planning Board, District 2 and District 3.
Now, did we get someone to fill the vacancy that we had on the Board of Equalization for District 2? That was the other at-large position. I think there's still a vacancy for District 2, if I'm not mistaken.
We'll
Is that
check.
correct?
Yeah, we'll check on that and put it on here and let you know that.
Yes, because I believe Mr. Faulkner lives in District 3, if I'm understanding correctly.
And the last thing I have is just a reminder that Monday, May 3rd, we will be having a board meeting at 9 a.m. Where I will present the budget to the proposed budget. And then also at 11 will be our joint meeting and lunch with the Board of Education. And we'll be having that downstairs in the training room. And that will be a time when Dr. Fleming will be presenting their budget request to us, formally presenting it. So if there's any other agenda items you would like for me to put on the agenda for that meeting, be thinking about it and get those to me if you will. There's a couple of things on there that that they would like to talk about as well. So I will, as soon as I have a draft agenda, Lindsay and I'll get that out to you. So we need to be thinking about other things, for that agenda. And I've got two more things, and then I'll be done. Do y'all try to?
No, fine.
Is that May 3rd?
May 3rd, yes, ma'am.
It's a regular meeting day, but we're going to make our
Just be
meeting
all day.
short, and then that one will follow it. Any?
I just have a couple of questions from the work session agenda this morning to next week's agenda. Do we not need to include the request for a statement of support from the Agriculture Advisory Board?
Well, I walked out with the people a while ago to kind of get clarification, and they technically don't need it anymore because they've already worked it out. They already received that letter, and so according to the representatives from DOT that were here, you can still do one, but you don't have to do it. And I spoke with Mr. Gardner, and it seemed like everybody was in agreement that there's really no action needed at this time. That's why we didn't put it on there. We weren't
Sounds good.
sure, but
Okay.
everybody felt like, and if I find out differently, I will let you know, but all of them in the hall previously didn't think we needed any action.
As far as me personally, that's fine. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, and then how about the request about the possible land sale City of Dunn?
That's up to you. If you want it on there, we will put it on there. We didn't know if y'all needed more discussion, if you needed more time. That's why we didn't put it as a draft, but if, we were kind of waiting on direction if you want to put it on there as a topic to discuss or not.
What's the pleasure of the board with that item?
I think we need more discussion on that. That's just me.
Okay, so would you like to put it off to the next work session and put it back on that agenda, Ms. McCoy? Or you think we could have the discussion needed if there's a motion brought on next week's?
I think we need to put it on to have more discussion.
Let's-
We'll make the right decision.
It's fine. Let's put that on the next work session agenda, and we'll revisit it at that time. Mr. Johnson, that okay with
Mine's
you?
pretty much made up, so.
Were they time sensitive? I know there was
Either
some
way.
time sensitive on that situation. Is that?
That's a good point, Mr. Snow. Let me
There
look.
was time sensitivity due to that grant, but I do not know. I'll need to pull it out.
Ms. Stewart, if you would check with Mr.
Okay.
Newshafer and see about the time sensitivity there. If it's something we need to address next week, then we'll just have discussion time to discuss it as much as we need to, if that's okay with Commissioner McCoy. And if not, then we put it off to the next work
Do you
session.
want us, do you want us to go ahead and add it to the agenda and it can always be removed?
That would be
It's
fine.
better to remove than to add
Ms.
to the.
Stewart's going to check on the timeline. It may be
Yeah,
something we
yeah.
need to discuss next week. If not, we'll put it on the next.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
So we'll make that item, I guess, after the public hearing. We'll do it as item 10, and we'll move county manager report to 11.
Okay, that's the only questions I had. Anyone else have any questions about the agenda? And Mr. Stewart, I think you said you had a couple more.
Just a couple of things. So I know,
Let me consider while you're on the agenda situation, as far as what might happen in closed session on a property acquisition, there might be an addition to that.
Very good.
Right. I do have one question.
Yes,
There has
sir.
been some conversation about requesting a change to the Economic Development Council bylaws to include the superintendent of public schools.
correct, but the problem is the way the bylaws are written, the council has to approve that before it comes back to the Board of Commissioners. So the Economic Development Council has to approve a change of the bylaws before the Board of Commissioners can vote on it.
Yeah, that was my understanding. When's the
Has
next?
it been submitted to them?
April 22nd, and it has been submitted to them.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, that's correct. I believe that's the, and I apologize if I should have mentioned that, but I think legal did come back and say that's something that the board, advisory board needs to approve first before it comes to us. Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. So any other questions or comments about the proposed agenda for next week? Okay, Ms. Stewart?
Okay, the last two things I've got. One is, we were talking about opening our offices back up, so we're looking at Monday, April 26th to open the library and this building, and then also possibly opening all the other buildings that have been closed to the public. A lot of offices have been open throughout the whole pandemic, so it's not a big deal for some. We do not have some of the lobbies open yet in some of the buildings. So we're going to do, I'll send you what the final, we've got a little team working on the best way to reopen. The state has put out reopening guidelines for state offices, so we're going to try to follow their protocols. The state is still going to try and conduct business virtually that can be, especially when there's going to be large groups of people. So we still have to adhere to all of our CDC guidelines and everything else. But we are going to do, April 26th is our target date for opening the library and this building and possibly the other buildings. We're just trying to get, again, a little team is kind of working on it to make sure we do it the best way for the citizens and for us, because there are some citizens that, we don't have all the plexiglass up yet, and there are some county employees that can't wear masks due to issues, and there's also the public that won't be able to wear masks. So that we just want to make sure everybody feels comfortable, and so we're kind of going building by building to make sure that's the case. We have not heard I've been speaking with the clerk of court to find out when the courthouse is going to open. They are still open they are having some courts, they are open by appointment, so some of ours may be that same way, but most of our buildings have been by appointment only. So we will let you know as we move, but April 26th is our date that we're shooting for. And also, April 30th, a lot of the governor's restrictions expire, so we don't really know what May is going to hold, so we're kind of thinking if we do it along that same line, do kind of a soft opening, we'll know more what the guidelines are and what the numbers are in late April. Do y'all have any problems with that, or does that sound okay?
Okay.
Okay, and then the last thing, we got this yesterday it's a resolution from the Harnett County Board of Elections, and I'll make sure we give you each a copy. They passed a resolution on April 6th to adopt and acquire the new voting equipment. I know they've spoken to you about that before. It's the ES&S voting system is the one they're recommending. There will be 22 scanner tabulators and 22 ballot marking devices included in this, and they are going to use some of the money. It's already on our capital plan, but they're also going to use some of the money they got for COVID to purchase this new equipment. So that was good news for us that they're going to use some of their money for that. So I'll just make sure you each get a copy of it, and just letting you know where we stand on that. So they are moving forward with the new voting equipment, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else any other commissioners want to mention this morning? I do believe we have need for a closed session.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move the board go into closed session for the following purposes. To discuss certain personnel matters, and two, to instruct the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating a contract for the acquisition of real property. This motion is made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11, A6 and 5.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Mr. Nichols, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we'll move into closed session. Thank you.